What is hell? Welcome to Philosopher's Corner. I'm John. What is hell? So traditionally, hell is thought of as a place in the afterlife of eternal damnation and punishment, typically for sins and immorality committed in the present life. So, what is hell philosophically? Well, let's back it up and we'll remove the afterlife for now and the religious connotations, and let's address it as what is it as a state of being and a state of consciousness. So for starters, hell is a place where you're out of harmony with your environment, or you're out of harmony with universal principle. Excuse me. So hell is a place that we get to in the current life by placing ourselves in situations that are out of harmony with universal frequency, which means we're making immoral choices, or we've decided that we want to exist in a state of being of discomfort to some level, whether it's physical, mental, spiritual, whatever it is. To be a citizen of hell it's a conscious decision. It's something that you earn your way to being in a state of constant distress through your immoral actions, which are conscious, or just a general decision to decide that you want to live in that particular type of environment for whatever reason. There are so many reasons to want to live in that environment, an environment in which there's pain, there's misery, there's disharmony, there's scarcity, there's all sorts of things. Some people decide that they are fine with living in it because they think they might have a position of authority in that situation, or that they might be able to satisfy some personal desires in it that they're not afforded in a regular moral life, or they may just enjoy pain. They may have no hope or conception of what it means to live in peace and harmony, and they may be exceptionally pessimistic. Essentially, one's attitude, if it doesn't account for a hopeful, optimistic, peaceful reality, and has resigned itself to a sort of eternal pessimism, they can focus on hell. And they become sadistic, masochistic. They can evolve to convince themselves that they enjoy living in that environment, which to a normal, healthy person would be an unconscionable, exceptionally painful, torturous environment. Certain people can consciously evolve themselves to adapt to that environment. Now, in a true hell, the joke's on them, because once you get to that environment, that's an environment filled with other people who are also sadistic and masochistic and have found new ways to overcome those people's pain thresholds, even though they think they've evolved into being able to enjoy the pain and the misery. When you join a community of people who are also sadistic and masochistic, they've developed all new ways to make you not enjoy your experience, even taking into account the fact that you've decided to evolve to a point where you can enjoy the unenjoyable. And all of those things can take place in the present moment. Those things don't require an afterlife to get there. It's like if you had a city of serial killers all decided they wanted to live together, and you know they would be enjoying it until it was a knock on the door and the best serial killer in town was visiting them that night. Then game would be over. So in terms of just the basic layout of what we would consider a hell, it's just a community of people, or I guess beings, who consciously make immoral choices, who are consciously out of harmony with universal frequency, and a community that it's a community because they're in the same environment and world and subscribe to a general set of principles together. Those principles being, more often than not, I guess you would have two camps of types of citizens of hell. You have those who are just immoral, and by being immoral and placing themselves in a state of constant immorality, don't necessarily have a bigger picture of things and are just enjoying it, and for whatever reasons don't have access anymore to living a moral life or have no interest in it, but they're conscious of it. And then you would have other people, or you'd have other members of that community who have a bigger picture, and they, for whatever reason, they want to live like that. That's just their decision, that they want to be in a lower frequency, a lower principled world. Once again, this does not require an afterlife to want to live in that type of environment. I would say there's literally millions of people on the planet right now who consciously decide to live in lower principled realms of reality. And many of them look very good doing it. To be a professional warmonger or human trafficker, or fill in the blank of many in the open professions who act as conduits for pain, suffering, human exploitation, animal exploitation, exploitation of Earth and her life force, and really anything that's out of harmony, directly, consciously out of harmony and anti-universal frequency, is already in that community to a degree. Now, the spiritual doctrines always sort of refer to hell as a rehabilitation world in the afterlife, of not only are they getting what they deserve because it's the consequences of their actions, whether it was a string of immoral actions or it was one sort of Faustian deal with the devil where they signed away their soul. They agreed to go to a place of punishment or rehabilitation, depending on how you look at it, in exchange for mortal gain. Or just people who just kept doing immoral stuff and ended up there. So it's either a reward or rehab in a way for the afterlife type sort of spiritual math, but relegating it to this world, we can see that there's a strong correlation, given a long enough lifespan, that when a person engages in self-determination and self-actualization, there's a high correlation between that and the level of the life that they're living in regards to the principles and the world and the community that they end up in. And we have it on the books that throughout history, tons of people decide to live immoral lives and they self-rationalize it, but it does not make them immune from the consequences of the communities that they end up being citizens of. And so in a very real sense, a lot of these people with ethics that are based on on rationalizing immoral actions, giving intellectual, rational, illogical conclusions to logical arguments, and give logical explanations to their immoral behavior so that they're comfortable living that way, and they create codes of ethics based on immoral principles, and they convince themselves that that's how they live, and they do live that way, and it leads them to living in a world of like-minded people. And when enough people do it and they're immoral enough for long enough, that seems to create a hell world where war for profit is legal, human trafficking is legal, exploitation of children is legal, all sorts of immoral and unconscionable activity is not only permissible, but it's legal, it's in the open, and people make their livelihoods off of it. And in that way, in that sense, that's a real hell that's created. And philosophically, I mean, in terms of the spiritual hell, which we can't really prove in this particular mode, its existence or non-existence, those same people that throughout human history have constructed real hells and lord over them and profit off of them have oftentimes used the idea that it can only exist in the afterlife to distract people in the current life that it in fact can exist right now, and does, and is a fairly profitable business model for many of them. Now, in the idea that the discomfort of being in disharmony with universal frequency that results in the punishment and the pain of living in a hell acts as a coercive or rehabilitative force, I agree that when we do the calculus and we set that interval, that integer out to, the limit out to infinity, that's true. That there's no energy in the universe that can stay in total disharmony with universal frequency for eternity. In that sense, eventually it's going to get aligned with universal frequency, because that's the way the universe, that's the physics of the universe. It doesn't matter. It could be an eternal immoral being, for the sake of a hypothetical, like an eternal immoral being, however that happens, and its one thing is that it's going to be disharmonious with universal frequency. It's aware of it. It's doing everything it can to live forever and not be there. And eventually, over an eternal timeline, it's going to get caught in a black hole, or it's going to be something's going to slip into its consciousness that enlightens the conscience and makes it so that it has to see what it's doing, and eventually, like, some permutation of the physical reality is going to get it aligned in harmony with universal frequency over a long enough timeline. And since we know creation is eternal, that means it's inevitable. Because the hell world and the citizens of a hell are there explicitly because they're practicing disharmony with the universal frequency. So they can be in it now, and they can try to evolve and try to live in that particular world as long as they can, and use false rationalizations to convince themselves that there's some morality consistent within the world itself. And that's where they'll become moral relativists to try to justify the bigger picture. Now, moral relativity it exists, but it's not it's not the way that they are explaining it, right? So like if you're in a hell world and you have a choice between shooting a dog in the head or just kicking it in the jaw and breaking its jaw, and you decide that day just to kick the dog in the jaw and break its jaw, well then yeah, more like in a morally relevant choice, like you've done the better thing. Doesn't mean it's a good thing, but you've done the better thing. And if you're trying to climb out of the hell world, maybe sparing the dog's life and just injuring it is the moral relative step that starts to make you go, oh, maybe I should make slightly better choices, and then eventually go, oh man, I've been living in disharmony with universal frequency in this world, and I'm a citizen with these other citizens that are the damned. This is a world of the damned. And so in that sense, the moral relativity is a ladder that can pull you out of the darkness. In the sense that they try to say, well, all all morality is relative, so that means that there's nothing is good or bad. That's incorrect. Like, the universe is relative, and it's relative to universal frequency, and that's the part they leave out of moral relativity. Yes, morality is relative. It's relative to universal frequency. It's not relative to your other petty, immoral actions, which is how they try to couch it so that they can trick people and deceive people into living in the hell world with them. Because the other part of getting out of a real hell world is that when you come out, you do have to face the consequences of your actions. You have to go through sort of morality car wash. So if you've been a warmonger your whole life and you've convinced yourself that it's all good, when in fact it's not, and you decide you want to leave that life and you want to join the real world of healthy people, they're probably going to put you on trial for war crimes when you come out. And then it's not a morally relative situation. Then it's very much morally absolute. So their only defense, like, it is key to the construction of a hell world to convince everyone in the hell domain that moral relativity is not just localized, but that it's universal. Because then it eliminates morality. Because then it says, well, morality is a floating target, and it doesn't really exist, and therefore there's no consequence for it. So let's just all live here in hell together. Which, of course, is a false intellectual premise. But it works on a lot of people. And one of the things is it's easy to get into hell, and it's exceptionally difficult to leave it. It's only rehabilitative in the sense that hell is just a world where people with similar principles and ethics live in that world. And it's only rehabilitative in the sense that you look around and say, oh, these are the people, this is my community now. And these are what these people's values are. And I'm finally feeling what actual pain is. I'm feeling what it feels like to have immoral actions done to me every day. And in that sense, it's making what was unconscious conscious. And in that sense, the pain portion of life is suffering, as the Buddhists say. That catalyzing factor in life of the suffering, of the pain of life, forcing the inward search for the value system in order to get in harmonization with universal frequency is true. And it's no different than if a person's living a normal, healthy life and they're feeling the regular pains of life that catalyze it, or people that are living who have felt it and they're continuing ascended growth, people who do really good things all day long, and they're in a correct moral state, and they live with good moral people, and they still feel the pain of life that catalyzes making the unconscious conscious. So in that sense, life is absolute. The factors of life that catalyze evolution and inward searching and making the unconscious conscious are absolute. So in a sense, whether you decide to live on a high moral principle with proper morality and good ethics, and you still feel the pain of life that catalyzes growth and evolution, or you find pause here for station identification. Or you find that you have constructed a set of ethics that lead you to consciously live in a hell world. The catalyzing force of life, being suffering and pain, is the same. But if you've gone down that path where you've normalized and rationalized an immoral set of ethics for yourself, and you find yourself living in a hell world with other hellions, the pain and the suffering of life, which many people in the hell world are there because they felt as though it was an escape from the pain, or that they made friends with the pain, or that they incorporated it as one of their life sources to fuel them as some sort of incredulous life hack to get around the fundamental primal forces of life as a catalyzing force for evolution, are going to find a great surprise. And that great surprise is that pain and suffering are fresh and unique to every situation, and they are inescapable. And they are inescapable because they are the catalyst for evolution, at least in this dimension. And so by steering oneself into a hell world with the notion, which is really in every one of them, that they're going to escape the pain or the suffering, or take control of it, or redefine the relationship with it so that they can be in control, the joke's on them, because they're out of control of it, just like any other being that's ever manifested into reality, completely out of their control. They can't control when it happens, they can't control the nature of it, and they can't control their reaction to it. And that's why one of the adjectives described the hell world is torture. And that's the true torture. The true torture is that they can't escape from themselves, they can't escape from their own actions, and they can't escape from the universe. It doesn't matter to put it off into the idea of an afterlife doesn't help anybody. Because hell is easily constructed right here, right now, and plenty of people are living in it and participating in it. And the joke's on them, because you can't escape the things they're trying to escape. Life is a catalyst for growth and evolution. And there's no escape from it. And in fact, when you harmonize with it and you grow with it, the pain, making yourself conscious of it, can become blissful. Now, the moment of the discomfort with new things and new growth never ceases. And it's not to be feared. Pain is different than fear. Discomfort is different than fear. Now, hopefully, if people spend enough time in hell in this life, not even in the afterlife, just in this one, they come to that conclusion, and they can begin their internal rehabilitative process, their healing, their understanding of the universe, their enlightenment. And enlightenment is an inevitable part of life as a sentient being. It's just a matter of time. So how much time do you need? How much time do you need to wake up? How much time do you need to get conscious? How much time do you need to figure out that the whole thing is making the unconscious conscious? And that when you do that, you feel amazing. And when you do that, you find your role in the universe. And when you find that, other people find you. And things can blossom and things can be beautiful. And there's in every way. And beauty is in every way as well. So even if you're in hell because you're a nonconformist, just know that bliss is nonconformist. Bliss has many faces. Bliss has infinite manifestations. Love and hope and joy have infinite manifestations. So if the idea that conformity was why you drove yourself to hell, be dispelled of that notion, because that's false as well. People live in hell worlds based on self-rationalized, illegitimate beliefs. And spending enough time in that state will inevitably disabuse people of those notions. So in that sense, it's rehabilitative, but it's not specific to hell, because life itself is a growth experience. You could call it rehabilitative, but it's more like a catalyst for being in harmony with universal frequency in a very existential manner, in just a very existential, energetic manner. So what is hell? It's a place that people create based on immoral systems and immoral sets of ethics, and built on a lot of deception. And it's a place that exists currently. It might exist in the afterlife. I mean, this is philosophy, so we can philosophize that the momentum of your soul continues on, and that the second law of thermodynamics is true, and that our energy continues, and our consciousness continues, and that the consequences of our actions continue, and that when we say the consequences of our actions, what we're really saying is the momentum of our moral decisions. Because as we find out, there's a correlation between our moral decisions and the frequency of our vibration. And the frequency of our vibration determines which realities we have access to. So you gotta make your daily choices accordingly and look at who you associate with if you want to really know what your ethics and values are. Well, thanks for spending some time here at Philosopher's Corner. I hope you found it helpful, and have fun.